I was walking past a souvenir shop this morning and I saw the usual stuff, the moose plushies, the maple syrup, the shirts that just say Canada on them.
Right.
And it got me thinking about, like, the brand.
The brand?
Yeah, brand Canada. Globally, it's this very specific image. We're the polite ones, the safe harbor. We're sort of the beacon of human
It's
rights.
definitely the marketing version.
Yeah.
The idea of the open door.
Exactly. But then I started reading the source material for today's deep dive, and wow, it felt less like a welcome mat and more like the blueprints for a machine, a really complicated machine.
It's a labyrinth. It really is.
We're looking at a document from Dara Immigration Services. It's their 2026 guide titled Refugee in Canada. And
Yeah.
honestly, it reads like a survival manual for a video game where you only get one life.
That's a great comparison. What I like about this guide is it just strips away all the political talk. It doesn't care about the headlines. It's just mechanics. It's deadlines, legal definitions, and some genuinely scary financial math.
So that's our mission today. We're going to ignore the politics and look at the plumbing. We want to understand what actually happens to someone who steps off a plane in 2026 and asks for protection.
Because the difference between success and deportation often comes down to, like you said, paperwork and geography.
And we have to remember, the people using this guide, they're not tourists.
No, they are fleeing persecution, war, violence. They are running for their lives, and they run straight into a wall of bureaucracy.
So let's start at the beginning. I think we need to clear up a misconception I definitely had. I use the word refugee as, a catch-all.
Everyone does.
But the guide makes it crystal clear that in the eyes of the Canadian government, that's not true at all.
Not even close. And this is probably the most critical distinction to make right away. The system runs on two completely different tracks. You cannot get them confused.
Okay, so what's track one?
Track one is the Resettlement Program. These are the people who are selected outside of Canada, usually by the UN Refugee Agency, the UNHCR.
So they're vetted before they even pack their bags.
Exactly. All the interviews, the background checks, that all happens overseas. So by the time they step off the plane in Toronto, the hard part is over. They arrive as permanent residents.
They have status. They have the golden ticket.
Essentially, yes. They're using the VIP entrance. But that is not who this guide is for. We are digging into track two.
The In-Canada Asylum Program.
The claimants, right. These are people who arrive at a Canadian airport or a border crossing and say, I need protection. They don't have a visa. They don't have status. They just have a claim.
And the burden of proof is all on them.
100% on them to prove their story to the government. It's a huge difference. Track one gets a welcome mat. Track two gets a court date.
Right. And there's another piece to this, the Safe Third Country Agreement.
Yes. That's a big point of confusion.
I feel like I'm always hearing about people walking across the border.
Well, in 2026, that door is largely closed. The agreement basically says that since both the U.S. and Canada are safe, you're supposed to claim asylum in the first safe country you reach.
So you can't just walk across from the U.S. anymore?
Generally, no. You'll likely be turned back unless you meet a very specific exception, like having close family here. That's why most of the people on track two, the ones we're talking about, are arriving by air.
Okay, so let's walk through that. I'm putting myself in their shoes. I've just landed at Pearson Airport. I'm terrified. I go up to an officer and say, I need asylum. What happens?
The moment you say those words, phase one, the claim, begins. They interview you, and then they take your passport.
And confiscate it.
Yes, and they keep it. You're trading your old identity for a new one in the system. They hand you a piece of paper called the RPCD, the Refugee Protection Claimant Document.
That sounds flimsy.
It is. But that piece of paper is your life now. It's your ID. It's the only proof you have that you're allowed to be in Canada.
Okay, so I have my RPCD. I'm legally in the country. There must be some relief there.
A little, maybe. But the guide warns this is actually the most dangerous moment. Because now the clock starts ticking on what it calls the most important document in your life.
This is the BOC.
The basis of claim form. If you make your claim inside Canada, you have exactly 15 days to fill it out and submit it.
15 days? That doesn't sound like a lot of time.
It's nothing, because it's not just a form. It's a detailed narrative of your trauma. You have to write down dates, names, places, everything about why you're afraid to go home.
And you're doing this while you're jet-lagged, traumatized, probably don't speak the language.
Exactly. And here's a trap. The whole system hinges on credibility. So if you write in your BOC that an event happened on a Tuesday, and then a year later at your hearing you get nervous and say it was a Wednesday.
It's just a small mix-up. Memory is fuzzy.
But the system can see it as a crack in your credibility. They'll say your story changed. And if your credibility is questioned, your whole claim can be rejected.
And rejection means?
Deportation. A typo or memory slip could literally send you back to the place you fled.
That is terrifying. It's a pop quiz where failing could be a death sentence.
It is. Which is why the guide screams, get a lawyer. Immediately. So you survive the BOC, you get it in on time, now you enter phase 2, the limbo.
Just waiting for the hearing.
Waiting, but with a checklist. First, medicals. You have 30 days to get an immigration medical exam.
Do you have to pay for that?
No, actually. Once you complete the exam, it triggers your health coverage under the interim federal health program. It's actually pretty good coverage.
Okay, that's good. But what about money? I've just landed. I have nothing.
And that's the bad news. You need a work permit, but it's not automatic. You have to apply for it separately. And in 2026, the processing time is 1 to 2 months.
Wait, so there's a gap. You're here, you need to eat, but you legally cannot work for up to 2 months.
Correct. It's a forced dependency. You're completely reliant on savings, if you have any, or on social assistance. And we'll get to those assistance numbers in a minute because they are shocking.
I can imagine. So you're in limbo, waiting for a work permit, waiting for a hearing. Eventually you get to phase 3.
The hearing itself. Before the Immigration and Refugee Board, you testify, and a decision maker decides your fate.
It's just yes or no.
It's yes or no. A yes means you're a protected person. You can stay and apply for PR. A no means you're looking at appeals or removal from Canada.
It's so heavy. But this is where the guide from Dara Immigration really surprised me. It pivots from the legal stuff to geography.
The regional breakdown.
Yeah. I just assumed everyone would go to Toronto or Vancouver, but this guide treats the map of Canada like a strategy board.
It has to, because where you land determines your chances of survival in a different way.
Yeah.
It's a trade-off between support and, well, survival.
Okay, let's play this out. I'm a newcomer. I want to go to Toronto. It's the biggest city. It's multicultural. Seems like the obvious choice.
And for legal support, you're not wrong. Toronto is the hub. You'll find the lawyers, the community centers, all the settlement agencies are there.
So what's the catch?
The catch is what the guide calls the critical challenge, the cost of living.
It's that bad.
It's worse. The guide says the government shelter allowance covers less than 50% of the average rent for a single room.
Wait, not an apartment, a room.
A single room in a shared house. So choosing Toronto for legal support means you are choosing to live in deep poverty.
Yeah.
It means mandatory shared housing and a heavy reliance on food banks.
So you have the best lawyers, but you can't afford to eat.
That's the trade-off.
Okay, Toronto's out. What about Montreal? The guide calls it a historic sanctuary city.
Montreal is a very attractive option. It has that European feel, rent is way lower than Toronto, and there's a strong culture of support.
But there's always a but.
A linguistic one. You have to learn French and fast. The government actually pays for Francization courses, which is great.
They pay you to learn.
Some small stipend, yeah. But while you're learning, it's hard to work. Plus, the guide points out a very practical detail. Heating costs in old apartments can wipe out your budget in the winter.
Wow. Okay, so if Toronto's too expensive and Montreal is too French, where does the guide say to go?
For financial independence, if you want to get on your feet as fast as possible, the guide points to Alberta, Calgary, and Edmonton.
Alberta? Really? Why?
It's just simple math. The government assistance rates, the RAP rates are higher there, but the rent is much lower, so you're not starting in a deficit. And more importantly, the job market.
What kind of jobs?
Not glamorous ones. We're talking meat processing, warehousing, agriculture. But employers in those sectors actively recruit newcomers. They need the labor.
So you can get a job fast.
Fast. And they're steady jobs. The guide says families stabilize much faster in Alberta because the gap between income and expenses is actually manageable.
It's like a Moneyball approach to resettlement. Go where the stats work in your favor.
Exactly that.
There was one more place mentioned, Atlantic Canada.
The lifestyle pick. Halifax, Moncton. Quiet, safe,
Right.
friendly. But the housing note here just blew my mind.
What was it?
It says in some of these smaller cities, a refugee family can still rent a whole apartment.
An entire apartment to themselves.
Yes, a private space with a door you can lock. That is a complete fantasy for a newcomer in Toronto or Vancouver.
The trade-off must be jobs.
Jobs in transit. The work is often seasonal fisheries, tourism, and public transit is limited. So you're choosing your difficulty every single time.
This brings us to the most visceral part of the guide. The financial reality.
The RAP gap.
So RAP is the Resettlement Assistance Program. It's the money the government gives you. But you said the rates are off.
They're tied to provincial welfare rates, not the actual cost of living in 2026. They are painfully out of date.
The guide has a table. Let's just look at a single person. This is the monthly deficit between their assistance check and basic rent.
In Toronto, for one person, that number is negative $100.
Let me make sure I understand that. You take every cent the government gives you for everything, you give it to your landlord for one room, and you are still $100 short.
Yes, before you've bought food, a bus pass, anything, you are already in debt just for existing.
That's impossible. How do people survive?
That's why the guide is so blunt. It says, you must use food banks. It's not a suggestion. It's a requirement.
What about Vancouver?
Negative 150. Even worse.
And Calgary?
Positive $100.
Wow. So that's a $250 swing per month just by picking a different city to fly into.
That's why the guide pushes Alberta so hard for financial stability. You actually have a small surplus. Even Halifax is only a negative $50 deficit. Tight, but maybe manageable.
So the strategy isn't to get settled and relax. It's to panic.
It's aggressive budgeting and speed. You have to get that work permit and take the first job you can find because you cannot survive on RAP.
And you're doing all this while you're waiting? The hearing backlog? How long is that wait in 2026?
It can be anywhere from 12 to 24 months for a decision.
2 years?
Up to 2 years. Living in total limbo. You're working, you're making friends, but every single day you know it could all be taken away. The psychological toll is immense.
The guide has interesting advice here. It says, don't pause your life.
Right. It feels counterintuitive. Why put down roots?
Yeah.
But the guide says you have to. Learn the language, work, volunteer. Because showing you're established can sometimes open up other legal avenues if your initial claim fails.
So you have to act like you're staying, even when you don't know if you can.
You have to bet on yourself.
There's one last warning in the guide I want to flag because it feels like a terrible trap. The travel home myth.
Oh, this is a huge one. And it's tragic because it almost always comes from a place of love or obligation.
Right. You hear a parent is sick back home or there's a funeral, you have your papers, you think, I'll just fly back for a week.
And if you do that, you could lose everything.
Why?
It's a legal concept called cessation. The government's logic is this. You claimed you were afraid of persecution in your home country. That's why we protected you. If you voluntarily go back, even for a day, you've just shown that you're not actually afraid anymore.
And they revoke your status?
They can, and they do. The guide is incredibly strict on this. Do not go back until you are a Canadian citizen. No exceptions.
That's harsh. It really underlines that the status isn't just a visa, it's a shield.
And if you lower that shield yourself, the government assumes you don't need it.
So we've unpacked a lot. The 2 tracks, the treacherous BOC form, the strategy game of where to live, the brutal math of the RAP gap. When you zoom out, what does this tell us about the Canadian refugee experience?
I think it tells us the open door isn't really an open door. It's an obstacle course.
The gap between the brand and the reality?
Precisely. We market ourselves as a beacon of rights, and legally, the system is there. But on the ground, it's a grind. You have to be a lawyer, an accountant, and a city planner all at once while processing incredible trauma.
Which brings me to the thought I can't shake. It's that trade-off we talked about.
A geography question.
Yeah. It just feels like this cruel irony. To win your legal case, to get the best chance of staying forever, you need the lawyers and support systems in Toronto. But to survive the wait for that case, to eat and pay rent, you need to be in Alberta.
It's a brutal dilemma. Do you choose legal safety and risk financial ruin? Or do you choose financial survival and risk a less supported legal case?
Do you want a lawyer or do you want lunch? That shouldn't be the choice.
But for thousands of people landing in Canada this year, that is the very first decision they have to make.
It's not just about getting in, it's about figuring out how to survive the welcome.
And that's why a guide like this one from Dara Immigration is so critical. When the system is this complex, knowledge isn't just power, it's survival.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the mechanics of the Canadian refugee system. An eye-opening look, for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening.
Catch you on the next one.